Little girl asks, "Are you my new daddy?" The janitor looks at the CEO, speechless. "Lucy, please stay here, sweetie. Mommy will be back soon," Olivia said, crouching in front of her daughter near the lobby desk of the tall corporate building. She brushed a golden strand from the girl's forehead. "Wait with Mr. Harold until I finish my meeting, okay?" The 6-year-old, dressed in a pale blue dress and white sneakers, nodded. "Okay, Mommy. But can I look around a little?" "Just stay where Mr. Harold can see you," Olivia replied, already walking away in her usual heels-clicking urgency. Harold, the elderly security guard, smiled gently. "You can explore a bit, kiddo. Just stay nearby." Lucy wandered toward the sunlit hallway. Golden rays spilled through the tall windows, glowing on the freshly polished floor. At the far end, a janitor was working. He was tall and lean, his dark hair tied back loosely. He moved with quiet rhythm, each motion deliberate as he smoothed the mop across the tiles. Lucy paused, watching. There was something calming about the way he worked. She saw him help a woman who had dropped her papers, collecting them quickly and handing them back with a quiet nod. Moments later, he assisted an elderly cleaning lady struggling with a trash bin, lifting it for her without a word. He hadn't said a single thing, but everything he did felt kind. Lucy's heart beat faster, her eyes widened. She closed her eyes for a second. In her imagination, a figure appeared, the one from the stories she'd drawn in her journal. A man who made pancakes on Saturdays. A man who never yelled. A man who always listened. She had never met her real dad. He left before she could remember. Her mom never spoke of him. So Lucy had imagined someone else. Someone better. A quiet hero who made her mom laugh and called her his sunshine. And now, watching this janitor, something clicked. She stepped closer. The man hadn't noticed her. He dipped the mop again, dragged it gently across the floor. "Are you my new daddy?" The words left Lucy's lips as naturally as a whisper. Marcus froze. The mop stopped. Slowly, he turned to the little voice. Lucy stood a few feet away, golden hair catching the light. Her eyes, wide, curious, full of impossible hope, met his silently. "Celine, I asked," she repeated, softer now. "Are you my new daddy?" Marcus looked at her. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. But his eyes, deep, steady, blinked slowly. Inside him something shifted, a flash of memory, a wound, a quiet ache. He opened his mouth slightly, but no words came. His voice was long gone. So he knelt, slowly, to her level. He didn't nod, didn't shake his head. He just looked. Lucy stared back. And then, for no clear reason, she smiled. Not because he answered, but because he listened. Before anything else could be said, a voice called out, "Lucy, come back here, young lady." It was Harold, waving. Lucy turned. "Okay," she sighed, as if ending a very serious conversation. "I have to go now." She gave Marcus one last look, then ran back down the hall, small feet tapping on the marble. Marcus stayed kneeling for a moment. The mop had slipped from his hand. Then, quietly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn notebook. Flipping it open, he wrote carefully, "I don't know if I'm your new daddy, but I hope your mommy smiles today." He tore out the page, folded it gently, and slid it into the front pouch of his work cart. Then, without a word, he stood and returned to cleaning, never knowing this would be the morning everything began. That evening, the apartment was quieter than usual. The TV flickered in the background. With a nature documentary, no one was watching. Olivia sat on the couch, laptop on her knees, her eyes focused but tired, her posture perfect but heavy. Lucy, curled up on the floor with her markers and a worn sketchbook, hummed softly as she colored in a drawing of a hallway very much like the one at her mom's office. She glanced up at Olivia, then looked back down, choosing the shade of brown closest to Marcus's hair. "Mommy," she said suddenly. Olivia looked up, startled. "Yes, honey?" "I met someone today." "Did you?" she asked absently. "A man, a janitor," Lucy said. "He was quiet, but he was really nice." Olivia paused, half listening. "Picked up papers for a lady and helped an old cleaning lady. And he gave me this look. Not a scary look, a nice one, like the ones in bedtime stories." Olivia closed her laptop slightly and gave her daughter more attention. "Lucy, you're not supposed to talk to strangers." "He's not scary," Lucy replied confidently. "He looked like a daddy." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Like your daddy?" Lucy nodded, her voice quieter now. "Like the daddy in my drawings. Not the real one, the one I wish we had." Olivia's breath caught for a second. She reached out and tucked a strand of Lucy's blonde hair behind her ear. "Sweetie, you know we're okay as we are, right?" "I know," Lucy whispered. "But sometimes, I think you'd smile more if there was someone nice." Olivia blinked, thrown off by her daughter's words. "It's time for bed," she said softly. The next morning, Lucy rushed ahead of Mr. Harrell and made her way down the same hallway she had visited the day before. She peeked around the corner, hoping the janitor would be there again. But the space was empty, quiet, polished, and still. Her eyes landed on a small square of paper, carefully taped near one of the utility lockers. Curious, she stepped closer. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, childlike but careful. "I don't know if I'm your new daddy, but I hope your mommy smiles today." Lucy's face lit up like a Christmas tree. She looked down at the locker and saw a small piece of tape with the letter M just below the lock. She pressed her tiny palm against the metal, smiling. It was him. She whispered to herself, "The nice janitor." Lucy turned, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and skipped back toward the lobby, her mind already spinning. That evening, as her mother finished dinner in the kitchen, Lucy sat at the table with a pencil and a sheet of notebook paper she had quietly pulled from her backpack. Her handwriting was messy, but determined. "Hi, Mr. Janitor. Thank you for your note. I think you'd be a great new daddy. Mommy is very nice, but she is sad a lot. She does not say it, but I know. She helps everyone at work. She works really hard, but she is all alone. If you are nice to her, she will smile more. Can you be my new daddy? It would make Mommy happy. Of Lucy." She folded the letter carefully and placed it into a small envelope she had made from 2 pieces of paper taped together. On the front, she wrote, "To Mr. M." The next morning, while Olivia talked to someone at the front desk, Lucy snuck away with purpose. She hurried down the hallway, heart racing, and quietly slipped the letter into the tiny mail slot on the janitor's locker. She stood there for a second, hand still resting on the cool metal, as if waiting for something magical to happen. Nothing did, but Lucy smiled anyway. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself. "He'll read it tomorrow." She skipped back to the front desk before anyone could notice she was gone. Back down the hall, hidden behind a supply cart, Marcus had seen her. He had not moved. He had not made a sound. He had only watched. And as she disappeared from view, he stepped closer to the locker, his eyes falling on the small, handmade envelope. He picked it up gently, as if it were something fragile. He did not open it right away. Instead, he pressed it to his chest, closed his eyes, and stood there for a long, long moment. Marcus was in his early 30s, young, but with eyes that carried a quiet heaviness. He moved like someone who had once laughed easily, but now chose silence. To most in the building, he was just the janitor who never spoke. Kind, efficient, invisible. No one knew why. Years ago, Marcus had been a literature teacher with a wife and young daughter. His life was filled with books, bedtime stories, and laughter. Then came the fire. A faulty wire sparked in the night, smoke filling the apartment before he could react. He found them, his wife and daughter, clinging to life. He tried to save them. He couldn't. Marcus lived, but his voice didn't. His vocal cords were damaged by smoke. The doctors told him he'd never speak again. But the deeper silence came from within. He left everything. Teaching, his home, his name in a way. He took a janitor job in a place where no one knew him, where he could vanish behind routine. And that was where Lucy found him. After their first meeting, she visited his hallway every morning. She brought drawings, stories, sometimes candy. One day she skipped up to him. "I wrote you a letter," she said. "Did you read it?" Marcus nodded. "Good. I put it in your locker. I wasn't sure if it'd get lost." He handed her a wrapped candy. She tilted her head. "What's this for?" He scribbled on his notepad. "It makes sad days sweeter." She smiled, then said thoughtfully, "My mom has lots of sad days. She doesn't cry in front of me, but sometimes I hear her, especially when it rains." Marcus paused. "He's really nice," Lucy added. "She works hard, she makes the best spaghetti, but she's lonely." He nodded slowly. "I told her about you," Lucy continued. "She didn't say much, but I think she listened." Later that week, Lucy arrived with her hair loose and messy. "Mommy forgot to tie it today," she said. Marcus gestured for her to sit. He pulled a rubber band from his cart, one he'd found earlier, and gently tied her golden hair back. Lucy stood, checking her reflection in the vending machine glass. "You did it perfect. You're good at this." Marcus smiled faintly and wrote, "Oh, I used to practice on my daughter's dolls." Lucy blinked, then nodded solemnly, as if understanding something she couldn't name. Their bond deepened in quiet ways. He left her paper cranes and notes. She brought more drawings, her and her mom at first, then one with 3 figures, herself, her mom, and a tall man with kind eyes. "This is you," she whispered. Marcus studied it and wrote, "Your mom is beautiful and brave." "She is," Lucy agreed, "but she doesn't know it." One morning as she sat near his cart, swinging her legs, Lucy looked up and said, "I don't remember my real dad. He left when I was a baby. Mommy doesn't talk about him." Marcus looked at her softly. "But if I got to choose a new daddy," she said slowly, "I think I'd pick you, because I'd remember you." Before he could react, the elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed. Olivia appeared, her eyes scanning. When she saw Lucy with Marcus, her brows furrowed slightly. "Lucy," she called, walking over. "What are you doing?" Lucy jumped up. "Mommy, this is the man I told you about, Mr. M." Olivia's eyes flicked to Marcus, tall, calm, respectful. He gave a quiet nod. She held his gaze a moment too long, something flickering in her eyes. She didn't thank him. She didn't speak. She simply took Lucy's hand and walked away. Marcus stood still for a long while, the mop at his side, and though not a word had passed between them, something in the silence had just begun to speak. That night, Olivia lay awake long after Lucy had fallen asleep. The apartment was still, except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside. Lucy's words echoed in her mind, how the janitor looked like the daddy in her dreams. But it wasn't just Lucy's words, it was his eyes. The way he looked at her, calm, attentive, kind, no awkwardness, no fake smile, just presence. And the way Lucy lit up around him, it stayed with Olivia, more than she wanted to admit. The next day at work, Olivia found herself watching, not deliberately at first, but every time she passed the hallway where Marcus worked, her eyes drifted. He never looked up when people walked by, he just worked, sweeping, wiping, organizing. She saw him lift a box for the receptionist, help an older employee with his space heater, wipe down a messy table after lunch. He moved like someone used to being invisible, yet poured care into every task. No show, no need to be seen. It was unsettling. No one was that genuinely kind. That afternoon, on her way to the marketing wing, she turned a corner and paused. Lucy was sitting cross-legged near one of the side hallways, reading something in her lap. Marcus was nearby, quietly organizing his cart. Lucy smiled softly at what she held, unaware of Olivia's approach. "Thank you," she said to Marcus, folding the paper and tucking it in her pocket like it was gold. Olivia's chest tightened. She walked over, "Lucy," she said gently. Lucy looked up, surprised. "Mommy, I didn't know you were coming." "What were you reading?" Olivia asked, kneeling beside her. Lucy hesitated, then pulled the paper from her pocket. "It's from Mr. M. He writes me notes sometimes." She handed it over. Olivia unfolded it. "Even when days are gray, you are someone's light. You are your mother's joy. And you, little one, are very, very brave." Her throat tightened. She looked toward Marcus. He stood near his cart, watching without watching, still but aware. That night, after Lucy went to bed, Olivia sat at the kitchen table, long after the lights were off. The note lay in front of her. She read it again and again. There was nothing strange in it, nothing over the line, but there was depth, care, and it was meant not just for Lucy, but for her. She reached for a pen. "I am her mother. I want to know who you are and why you are writing things like this to my daughter." She folded the note and slipped it into her work bag. The next morning, without a word, she placed it into the crack of Marcus's locker and walked away, unsure what she even expected. But the reply came. The next day, inside her own locker, was an envelope. No name, just a single folded note. "I am someone who once had something and lost it. I was silent for too long. I have nothing but time, gratitude, and a heart that's been broken more than once. Your daughter reminded me there is still light. I never meant to intrude. I just wanted to say thank you for raising someone so kind, so curious, and so unafraid of silence." She read it once, then again, and again. She sat on the bench in the locker room, the letter open in her lap. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from something else. There was no performance in the words, just truth. For the first time in years, someone had seen Lucy, not as a distraction, but as light. And for the first time in a long while, someone had seen Olivia as a mother worth thanking. She folded the note and tucked it into her purse, her chest warm with something she didn't yet name, but knew was beginning. It started with a forgotten notebook. Olivia had stayed late that night, finishing reports in the conference room. Lucy was nearby, coloring quietly. Marcus was cleaning, careful not to interrupt. When he finished, he gave Lucy a soft wave and turned to leave, but something slipped from his cart and landed with a soft thud. Olivia bent to pick it up. It was a small leather notebook, worn and weathered. She called, "Marcus, this is yours," but he was already gone. She intended to drop it at the front desk, but then she opened it. The handwriting stopped her. Her heart skipped. She turned another page, then another. It wasn't just the writing, it was the tone, the rhythm, the tenderness of the words. It was familiar, unmistakably familiar. That night, at home, she pulled a shoebox from her closet, the one filled with letters from her late husband. Sitting on the floor, she read them again, then compared. The phrasing, the gentle metaphors, the same expression, kindness lives in the quiet corners. Her husband had written that, and so had Marcus. The next morning, Olivia waited by the loading dock. When Marcus turned the corner, he froze. "You knew him," she said softly. "My husband. You knew him, didn't you?" Marcus slowly reached into his jacket and handed her an old photograph. Two young men stood side by side, her husband and Marcus, younger, smiling. She stared. "Why didn't you say anything?" Marcus pulled out his notebook and wrote, "He was my professor, my mentor. He believed in me when no one else did. He taught me to write when my life was falling apart. When he died, I stopped everything. I stopped speaking. I came here hoping to find something still worth hearing." Tears stung her eyes. She handed the photo back, but he shook his head. His gift to her. That same afternoon, HR called her into a meeting. Someone on the board had filed a complaint about Marcus spending time with a child on company property. A background check raised concerns, old records of hospitalization, no employment history for years. Words like unstable, potential risk, and inappropriate contact, filled the room like poison. "We're letting him go," someone said. They asked Olivia directly if she ever felt uncomfortable having him near her daughter. She stared at them, speechless. That night, Olivia sat alone in her car, notebook in hand. Lucy was at her grandmother's, and the silence in the apartment had followed her. She flipped through Marcus's pages, entries about cleaning routines, kind observations about her co-workers, notes about Lucy's art, and then one line. "Her laughter reminds me what mercy sounds like." She cried. Then she made a choice. The next morning, Olivia stood before the board, not as a department head, but as a mother. She told them about Lucy's loneliness, about a janitor who never crossed any boundary but helped her daughter smile again. She told them about Marcus, his grief, his silence, his strength. She read one of his letters aloud. Then she looked every one of them in the eye and said, "Matt is the safest man I have ever met." Later that day, as the sun began to set, Marcus sat alone on a bench behind the building. His name tag was gone, his cart left behind. A box of belongings sat on his lap. Olivia walked up quietly. When he looked up, she sat beside him. "They're not letting you go," she said. Marcus blinked, unsure. She handed him a paper, an internal letter signed by every department head, including the CEO, requesting he be kept on. He stared at it in disbelief. She smiled. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, "and neither is my daughter." And for the first time, Marcus let out something between a breath and a laugh, silent but full of life. Something inside him had shifted. Something had come back. The day had started like any other. Olivia was in back-to-back meetings, her phone buzzing every 10 minutes with new emails and calendar alerts. Lucy had come with her that morning, tucked into the corner of her mother's office with a coloring book and a snack. But children grow restless, especially when the walls around them feel too quiet, too still. No one noticed when Lucy slipped out. It was only a few steps down the hall, just enough to chase the sound of a bird outside or follow the strange blinking red light near the maintenance wing. A door that normally stayed locked stood slightly ajar. Lucy, curious and completely unaware of the danger, pushed it open and stepped inside. The supply room was large and dark, stacked with shelves and boxes. She took a few tentative steps in, glancing around at the unfamiliar space. Behind her, the door clicked, then closed, then locked. She turned around, tried the handle, pushed. Nothing. Lucy called out. Once, twice. Her voice echoed back at her. She knocked. Silence. She wasn't scared at first, but minutes passed. Her small hands beat against the door harder, her voice rising, cracking. The light inside the room flickered. She sat down, hugging her knees, tears starting to fall. Outside, Marcus was finishing his cleaning round when he noticed something strange. The hallway near the storage wing, normally locked, was ajar, just slightly. And there, lying on the ground, was a pink crayon. He froze. The newcomer moved. "Be quick." He rushed to the door, yanked the handle. Locked. He knocked once. A tiny voice cried out, "Help!" Without hesitation, Marcus dropped to the floor, trying to see under the door, then ran to the nearest emergency box, grabbed the override key and returned. But the lock jammed, rusted or faulty, and wouldn't turn. He backed up, heart pounding. Then lunged forward, slamming his shoulder against the door. Once. Twice. On the third try, the latch gave way. The door flew open. Lucy was crouched on the floor, tears streaked across her cheeks. "Mr. M," she cried. Marcus scooped her into his arms, hugging her tightly for a long, breathless moment before stepping back, checking her carefully for injuries. She was okay, frightened but whole. Then Olivia's voice rang out from down the hall. "Lucy!" She came running, heels clacking, eyes wide with panic. She froze when she saw Marcus, dirty, slightly limping, holding Lucy in his arms. Her breath caught. Then, without thinking, she rushed forward, pulled Lucy close, crouched around her, holding her tight. "Are you okay?" she whispered, eyes full of terror. Lucy nodded. "He saved me, Mommy. The door was locked and I was scared, but he got me out." Olivia looked up at Marcus. His arm was bleeding, a deep scrape along the forearm from the broken latch. He waved off her concern with a slight shake of his head, then pointed to Lucy. He had only cared about her safety. Then, slowly, he turned, walking away before Olivia could say a word. He disappeared down the hallway, shoulders slightly hunched, one hand pressed against his bleeding arm, the other wiping his face, as if pushing back something heavier than sweat. That night, Olivia sat at her desk, staring at an envelope. Inside was a short note she had written, folded 3 times. She slipped it into Marcus's locker just before leaving the office. The next morning, when he opened it, he read, "You didn't have to save my daughter. You didn't have to break a door or bleed or stay silent about it. But you did, and you never asked for anything, not a word, not a thank you. You just walked away. I owe you more than I can say. I owe you an apology for ever doubting you. And I owe you thanks for giving my daughter back to me, for giving me back a kind of faith I forgot I had." There was no signature, but he knew. That afternoon, Marcus left a small card taped to Olivia's locker. It said, "I cannot be her father, but maybe, if it is not too much, I can be the reason you smile one more day." When Olivia found the card, she didn't cry. She didn't rush to find him. She simply stood there, holding the words in her hands, heart aching with something soft, something unexpected, and somewhere, deep inside, she smiled. The invitation came quietly, almost as if Olivia had whispered it to herself before saying it aloud. "Would you like to come to dinner?" she asked Marcus one afternoon, as Lucy twirled in the lobby behind her. He looked surprised, hesitant for a second, then nodded. That evening when he arrived, he stood at the door holding a paper bag with apples and a small bouquet of daisies. Olivia opened the door wearing a soft sweater and jeans, her hair loosely tied back. She looked nothing like the crisp, controlled woman from the office. She looked like someone trying to remember how to let someone in. "Come in," she said gently. Lucy squealed from the living room, running over barefoot. "You came!" She hugged Marcus without hesitation. "I told Mommy you'd come." He knelt to her level and handed her the bag. She peeked inside and gasped, "Apples! My favorite!" Dinner was simple. Roasted chicken, rice, a salad. Olivia had overdressed, but the atmosphere felt like something carefully stitched back together from pieces that had been lost. Marcus moved around the kitchen silently, helping without asking. He found a loose chair leg on Lucy's seat and tightened it with the screwdriver Olivia had buried in a junk drawer. He reached for a knife and quietly peeled apples for dessert, carving one slice into a heart and placing it on Lucy's plate. She giggled, eyes shining. "Mommy, look, it's a heart." Olivia smiled, her eyes lingering on Marcus's hands. Steady, precise, kind. She began to notice the way he moved through the space, not intruding, not avoiding, just present. At one point, while she and Lucy were washing dishes, she noticed a small piece of paper stuck to the fridge with a magnet she had never used before. It read, "This kitchen has been missing laughter, but never love." She read it twice, heart catching, then looked at Marcus, who was wiping down the counter. After Lucy went to bed, Olivia poured 2 mugs of tea and sat across from him at the small table. The clock ticked softly in the background. She looked down at her cup, then up at him. Her voice was quiet. "My husband died 5 years ago. A car accident. It was fast. He was gone before I could say goodbye." Marcus's expression softened, and he reached for his notebook. She stopped him with a hand. "It's okay. You don't have to write anything," she said. "I just wanted to tell you." She looked around the apartment, the mismatched furniture, the toys scattered under the couch, the unopened mail on the counter. It's hard being both, mother and father, protector and provider. Some days I do everything right. Other days, I just survive." Marcus watched her, eyes full of the kind of listening that makes silence feel safe. "I don't let people in," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not anymore, but somehow you made it past the part of me that always says no." He reached into his pocket and slid a folded paper across the table. She opened it carefully. "I never wanted to take his place, but I'd be honored to sit beside it, if you ever let me." She pressed the paper to her chest for a long moment. They didn't say the word. Not love. Not us. But they didn't have to. Because in the quiet warmth of a too-small kitchen, with the scent of apples in the air and the sound of a child breathing softly down the hall, Olivia realized something she had been afraid to admit for a long, long time. Sometimes, the heart doesn't need to hear anything. It just needs someone who stays. The notice came on a Monday morning. Folded neatly inside a plain envelope, the letter carried the company's seal and a cold, professional tone. It cited violation of conduct policies regarding repeated contact with the minor child of an employee, and declared Marcus's employment terminated, effective immediately. He read it twice. No explanation, no conversation, just gone. Marcus gathered his few belongings, his mop, his notebook, the paper cranes Lucy had made, and the small tea tin Olivia once gave him. He packed them gently into a cardboard box and walked slowly through the halls, a quiet goodbye in a life filled with them. By lunch, rumors had started. By early afternoon, Olivia stood outside HR, demanding to speak to the board. At first, they refused. Then she sent an email, and a second, subject line in all caps. The next morning, the boardroom was full. Executives, department heads, even Harold, the security guard. Olivia stood at the front not as a manager, but as a mother. Her voice was steady, her eyes fierce. "I know what this letter says," she began, holding up Marcus's termination, "but I want to tell you what it doesn't say." The room went still. "It doesn't say he pulled my daughter out of a locked storage room when she was crying. It doesn't say he risked injury for her, or that he walked away afterward without asking for thanks." She paused. "It doesn't say he's the first person to make her laugh since she lost her father, that he helped her trust again, that he reminded her, and me, that kindness still exists." A hush settled across the room. Marcus never crossed a line, he only gave. And if that's a reason to fire someone, then maybe the problem is not him, it's us. Silence. Then the CEO stood. "I'd like to rescind the termination," she said, "and offer Marcus a new role, one where he doesn't have to hide his heart." Applause followed, quiet but sincere. Just outside, Marcus stood frozen. Olivia approached, smiled, and took his hand. Later that week, Olivia drove Marcus and Lucy to a small cemetery outside the city. They stopped beneath tall trees, where the wind whispered gently. She led them to a headstone, her husband's. Kneeling, she brushed the stone, then looked up. He was kind. He never liked silence, but he believed in people. She smiled softly. "I think if he were here now, he'd see how Lucy looks at you, and he'd choose you, for both of us." Lucy tugged on Marcus's sleeve and handed him a drawing. 3 people holding hands beneath a starry sky. A tall man, a woman with golden hair, and a little girl. Above them, in crayon, "My family." Marcus's hands trembled. He reached into his pocket, not for his notebook, but a folded note he had written earlier. "I'm not your husband, but I promise to love you in the quietest, strongest way I can." Olivia read it, pressed it to her chest. "That's all I need." That evening, under a golden sunset in the city park, Marcus walked beside Olivia, Lucy perched on his shoulders, arms stretched wide to the wind. Their steps were quiet, their presence enough. No grand promises, no perfect ending, just something new, a beginning that finally felt like home. Thank you for joining us on this deeply moving journey of quiet love, unexpected healing, and the kind of family that is chosen not by blood, but by the heart. If this story touched your soul, made you smile, or reminded you of the beauty in life's quietest moments, please consider subscribing to Soul Stirring Stories. We bring you heartwarming tales that uplift, inspire, and remind us all that love often speaks loudest in silence. Subscribe now to Soul Stirring Stories and never miss a story that heals your heart, because sometimes all it takes is one story to change everything.